So I know one of the things that people like about Commander, or EDH if you still want to call it that, is the fact that there are a lot of very obscure and unknown cards that are still not really well known to this day. And I know people really like hidden gems a lot, so this week I decided to pick out some really strange cards that probably most people may not have heard of, but they're actually really powerful in this format if you use them effectively. So I'm going to just display the cards in the video as well, so you're not confused on what the cards do. The first one's called Crackdown, and Crackdown is basically like a totally biased version of Meekstone, whereas you basically freeze any big creature that's not white, and if you're playing a white deck yourself, and which you probably should be, your creatures, your big guys, are going to stay untapped and still be able to swing through despite having the Crackdown in play. It's also nice that Crackdown is enchantment, and enchantments are usually much harder to destroy than artifacts because a lot of decks do pack artifact destruction. Not all of them pack a ton of enchantment destruction on the other hand. Next guy is something called Shimmer. Shimmer is basically one of those hilariously awesome cards where you play it on against a monocolored deck, and they're basically kind of busted because they pretty much get their turn skipped every other turn, essentially, if they're just playing a lot of just basic lands. Because you drop this, and they only get a turn every other turn, essentially, unless they already have stuff out in play that they can use. I know some people don't like land destruction a lot, but this really isn't considered land destruction. It's more like land denial. And even if Shimmer dies, all the lands that got phased out will just phase in on the next turn anyway. But Shimmer is one of those cards that no one really hears about, but it just totally blindsides someone if they don't really expect it. Next guy is called Burning Sands. I mentioned this on one of the Commander Cast episodes when we were talking about how red is more powerful than most people realize, and I brought this card up because it's a good example of something that red has that most people don't hear of, but it's actually a really good card. Basically, if token decks are giving you problems, Burning Sands is a really good way to really put them in their place. You drop this guy, and then you play some sort of sweeper spell, and then when all the tokens die, that player is going to end up having to sacrifice a lot of lands. And it also affects everyone, so I don't know, I haven't played this card exactly, but if there's one guy that's just like pumping out tons and tons of tokens, this is an excellent deterrent to at least keeping him honest. Next card is called Hymn of Rebirth, and this is a really obscure card considering it's from Ice Age, but basically it gives the ability for green and white to reanimate something from any graveyard, and usually this is in the domain of black because you expect it on a card like Beacon of Unrest to reanimate. But a card like Hymn of Rebirth is totally unexpected because people do expect white and green to recur from their own graveyards, but they don't expect them to plunder from other people's graveyards. So Hymn of Rebirth can be a really nice reawakening. And then I also have a guy called Fumarole, and Fumarole is kind of a really awesome 2-for-1 because it's pretty much guaranteed to destroy 2 relevant cards in play, and the paying of the 3 life is almost irrelevant in this format considering you start with 40 life. It is a little bit expensive considering it is 5 mana, it's a sorcery, but it is a 2-for-1, and it destroys 2 very important card types. So that's kind of all I have for this week. Essentially, if you guys have any other really weird hidden gems out there that most people really haven't heard of, go ahead and leave them in the comments, and if that's going to be it for that, I'll see you guys next week.